Hey everyone. Okay, welcome back. So I'm on recording 2 now. We'll see if I get through everything in this recording, and if not, I'll go on to number 3. So we were looking at Popple v. State, and I had just gone through the opinion and showed you different aspects of it. But now I want to talk about those head notes that I mentioned earlier, that I skipped over just to show you the opinion. And now I'm going to just show you briefly what these are. These are a really cool tool that Westlaw has. They're basically that index I was talking about, that help organize categories and kind of subjects that are discussed in cases, and they make research really easy for you. So let's pretend you're looking at this, and for whatever reason, you are trying to figure out, you think this number 4 here is interesting to you. Again, it's all going to depend on the facts and the legal issue you're looking at, the facts of your case. But let's pretend real quick that this topic interests you here as part of your research. Police officer does not need to have founded suspicion to approach individual to ask questions. If you don't want to read through the whole case, especially when you're doing research and you don't want to read through all, say, 27 of these cases, and you're trying to narrow some things down, find something on point, at least as a starting place, you could, and this caught your eye because it's something you're looking for, you could click on real quick, you could click on here, this 4, and it's going to bring you right to the part of this case in Popple v. State that talks about that issue and any law on it. Like I said in my last recording, you can click on these cases and read them. But it's going to give you kind of this, it's going to bring you right to this part of the case that talks about, again, this kind of sub issue that you might be interested in. And you can either say, oh, yep, that works for me, and you can read more, and then maybe you end up reading this whole case. Or you say, nope, it doesn't work for me, and you can just quickly pop right back to the top, and it brings you right back to where you were in those head notes. And then you can see there's all these other subjects and topics. There happens to be 6 in this case that this case really summarizes, right, and talks about. So the other cool thing that you can do is not only within the case use these head notes, but see right here where it says 27 cases that cite this head note? So this basically is telling you, and it's going to link to you, 27 other cases that talk about this particular sub-issue. So you could click right on it, and here you go. You got 27 cases. They do 20 on one page. West tends to do that. You could scroll all the way down, and then you could click this arrow over here and go to the remaining 7. But what's cool about it is, I'm just going to stay at the top here for a moment, is that you can see the head notes this case talks about. There's that number 4 head note. Police officer does not need to have founded suspicion to approach an individual to ask questions. There's also head notes 5 and 6, which are the same topics that were in that Popple case we just talked about. And you can see in where it says here in depth, this is how much this case, this State v. Woods case, talks about those particular topics in those head notes. So it clearly does a pretty strong analysis there. And then you can see as it moves down, starts with 4, goes to 3. These are going to do some in-depth analysis on those topics, and then 2. And as you move down and go into the next page, it'll start to get to 1. So your cases here at the top might be pretty informative to the issue and the sub-issue you might be looking at. And you could literally just click on them, and it'll bring you right to the case. Loading. And you can literally scroll down. Again, it has the same synopsis at the top. It'll have new head notes that this particular case deals with. Think of it as like a flow chart. But you can scroll down and you'll see, look, it actually highlights Popple v. State of kind of where it talked about it, what this court did with that case. You can see it's referencing it here. It is, again, talking more about Popple. It's really kind of going into this, analyzing the Popple case. And then it's either, let's see, I think it comes down here, and I missed it. And so, here it is. So Popple, it actually concludes, it does like an analysis of the Popple case and what the Supreme Court says the Florida Supreme Court held and blah, 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 all citing Popple. But then it says, Popple is not dispositive in the present case. First, Popple is factually distinguishable. And then it goes on to explain why Popple's still good law, But this Woods case is effectively analyzing similar issues as Popple, but it's saying because the facts are different, even though Popple's still good law, the court comes to an opposite conclusion here. And I won't bore you with the details of what it is or why, but the point is, I just want you to see how these cases build on each other and analyze similar issues and ultimately come to whatever conclusion they do. And you can scroll down and then they ultimately come to their holding and conclusion. All right. And so and so you would want to read through these things and figure out, like, what are the courts looking at to answer these legal questions? And again, it'll just be whatever legal questions are relevant to the legal issue your supervisor has asked you to look into. And so what you could do is, one thing I just want to bring to your attention is, I'm going to go back for 1 second. Is that's why I don't want you to freak out when you see this distinguished by and it says negative here. Don't stress. That doesn't mean Popple, that doesn't mean this case is bad or that Popple's a bad case or no longer good law. All it just means is that Woods v. State didn't rely on Popple or didn't necessarily agree with the factual reasoning of Popple to come to the same conclusion. It just relied on Popple. Popple's still good law, but it just came to a different conclusion, okay? And I'll talk more about key citing in a minute, but don't panic when you see this negative. It just means it probably came to a different outcome, but the case you were looking at is still good law, and again, we'll talk more about that. But you'll see here, you could do the same thing with State v. Albert, and it just says discussed by, right? And again, same situation, similar issues. You'd scroll down and you'd find Popple highlighted. Here we go. In Popple v. State, and you could analyze what this does for you through these head notes is it basically it shows you right in the opinion where you're looking for this issue, where you're looking for this case, so you don't get bogged down in everything, and you can quickly kind of sort through and figure out what's relevant to what you need, what isn't, and you can actually start to find good cases that are either on point or distinguishable in some way, but that can be helpful to you. Sometimes when a case is different, it doesn't mean you lose or win. You can make arguments based on that. And as you go on in your career and in school, you're going to learn how legal analysis works that way. But for now, I don't want you to stress about that. For now, I just want you to understand kind of the basics of how you can use Westlaw and through these tools that it has to find cases that are related to the legal issues you are looking at, okay, or interested in for purposes of your research, okay? So let's pop back for a second. Okay, so I'm going to go back again. So I'm still technically in this document, Popple v. State. It's just I've narrowed down the citing reference. See, it says citing reference is 737. We don't stress about that. I clicked on the head note. Remember the citations for this particular head note, and that's what's so nice about it. This Popple v. State has been cited in other cases 737 times in 352 cases, 21 trial orders, 20 secondary sources, 206 appellate documents, and 138 trial documents. You do not have to read through all of that because of Westlaw's lovely head note system. You found the head note in Popple v. State that interested you because it was right there at the top, and you were able to find cases related to that particular topic, okay? As well as other ones. It bounces around. Cases aren't always about one thing. Sometimes they have multiple issues, but the point is you really use this to narrow it down. So you're only looking at potentially 27 cases, maybe even less than that, instead of 737, okay? So let's go back real quick. We're still technically in this Popple v. State, so you can literally just click back to this where it says document, or you could click right on there and it says on Popple v. State. And either way, it'll bring you back to the Popple v. State decision, okay? And so what you want to do here is now we want to, I mentioned this thing called key citing and shepherdizing. So something that's really important to keep in mind is that so key cite is Westlaw's citator, okay? And key citing or shepherdizing, and the reason it's called this AKA key citing or shepherdizing is because literally Shepard's Case Reporters was at one time, back in the day when we used books, was the publication that shepherdized these cases that showed whether or not they were still good law. But because of the magic of technology, you guys now get to use Westlaw to do it, and it makes it so much easier, okay? So the whole point of key citing or shepherdizing, it's the same thing, is to determine the current validity of the authority you're looking at, okay? So, and just before I get into this a little bit more, I just want to touch on that the whole point of using a citator as a legal researcher is for primarily three reasons. You want to determine whether and where the authority found has been cited in other sources, kind of like we just did, but I'm going to show you a different way to do it. You want to see where it's been cited in other sources and why. You want to discover whether the authority is still good law. That is super, super important, obviously, because if a case has ever been overturned or reversed, you can't rely on it, and it would be a huge mistake to do so and could get you in a lot of trouble. And then 3 is to locate more recent authority dealing with the same or a similar legal principle. Like I said, you can build on these cases, build on each other. And they develop these I should say, legal concepts over time. And so you get better and better or I should say, you get better at understanding the legal issues that you're looking at as they've developed through time, okay? Because like I've said, legal principles develop with each new factual case. They get built upon, and kind of once it's settled, it'll just start to be repetitive, and you'll be able to just find cases that stand for a legal premise, and you'll know, listen, boss, this is the answer to the question. This is where courts have come out on this. And I promise that might sound a little confusing, but the more that you do legal research and you tinker with these tools and you read these cases, you're going to start to realize it. You're going to be like, oh my gosh, they all cite back to these older cases, these Supreme Court cases, and they've built on them over time as various factual scenarios have been presented to the court. And that's effectively how it works. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop this recording, because I only have like 2 minutes left before it's going to shut off on me. And then I'm going to start again a third recording on how to work the citator in Westlaw so that you know how to key cite. And then I'll go into some other stuff, and hopefully that'll be the last one. Okay? All right. Thanks, guys. Hang in there with me. I promise we're getting there. Almost done.